What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my 2025 ACC football predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. I've already gave you my predictions for 2025 for the other Power 4 conferences. I've done the SEC already, the Big 10, and then the Big 12. Show you what the standings could look like based on those predictions, and then also give you my conference champion as well. And that's the same thing we're going to do in this video right here with the ACC. We are finishing things up here with these team predictions, and we got my college football playoff video coming out tomorrow possibly, or sometime in the next few days, as this season is getting closer and closer to start up. So let's go ahead and jump right into my 2025 predictions for the ACC conference, and I'll give you my conference champion at the end of this video as well. So let's jump right in. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top, starting here with the bottom two teams. You got Wake Forest and Stanford both at the way bottom of the standings here in this conference. Wake Forest 4-8, 0-8 in conference play, and then Stanford at 3-9, 1-7 in conference play. So you look at the differences here between these two teams. You know, both of these teams actually were not the worst teams in the respective conference last year. Last season it was Florida State. Stanford probably was like, you know, maybe the second to last team in the conference, but these two teams probably could be the two worst teams in the conference this year. But you look at Wake Forest, you know, I can definitely see them doing that better than that 4-8 record. You look at their schedule this year, it sets up pretty well for the Demon Deacons, but it is a new era for the Wake Forest football program. They're going to have a new head coach, and I just have a lot of question marks about this team on both sides of the football, because you got so many players that probably transferred out, and then you got some new players that are coming in. So yeah, Wake Forest definitely has a lot of question marks. And to me, I don't know if anybody is going to go winless in this conference. Just looking at all the teams, I feel like there will be maybe a ton of parity in this conference. Maybe there's going to be that one dominant team, or maybe there's like two dominant teams that will take control of the conference. And then the rest of the, you know, teams could be definitely wide open. But yeah, Wake Forest and Stanford I feel like are going to be at the bottom, but I do got Stanford winning a conference game, and that one win, of course, coming against Cal. Wake Forest, their 4 wins come in the non-conference, but all their losses come against ACC opponents. So, yeah, for Wake Forest, again, I can see them doing much better than that 4-8 record. Stanford definitely could be the worst team in the ACC, but like I said, these two teams were not the worst teams last year. It was Florida State last season that went 2-10, but none other team went in the ACC. You know, none of the teams went winless, so that's what this conference is really made of. I feel like it's not going to be probably a team where they go winless, but still, I look at these two teams. I think Stanford and Wake Forest probably going to be definitely at the way bottom of this conference, but like I said, either Stanford or Wake Forest could be the worst teams in the ACC. But let's now go to the next set of teams here for 2025. We got Boston College here at the bottom. We got them at 4-8 and then 2-6 in the conference. Boston College coming off a pretty solid season last year, but that was probably because of the schedule for the Eagles, because, you know, the schedule last year was pretty easy for them. This year it's kind of a tougher schedule, but I do have them at least winning a couple of games in the conference, so it's not like Boston College is going to be terrible. I mean, they're going to at least win a couple of conference games in my opinion, but it's not going to be a really good record at the end of the day. So yeah, I got Boston College going 4-8 this year in 2025. Like I said, they were a big surprise last year, but this year could be a step back year for them, for the Eagles. And then we got 3 teams all predicted to go 5-7. You got Virginia, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse. I have all these teams going 5-7. For Virginia though, I got them going 2-6, and then Pittsburgh and Syracuse, I have them going 3-5 in the conference respectively. Virginia here, I feel like they can do much better than that 5-7 record. Kind of similar to Wake Forest, they have a pretty easy schedule this year. The Cavaliers definitely could be trending in the right direction if they do make it to a bowl game, but I just think it's going to take some time. They don't have a talented roster, and it's just not the same as it used to be. So yeah, Virginia, even though they have a pretty easy schedule just like Wake Forest, I still think they're going to come up just short of making it to a bowl game. And then you look at Pittsburgh and Syracuse. I do got Syracuse ahead of Pittsburgh because of the head-to-head. I know the head-to-head doesn't really matter matter here in this situation because they both have the same records at 5-7 and 3-5 in the conference respectively. But still, I'm going to put Syracuse ahead just because of that head-to-head, just in case here. For Pittsburgh, they can probably go 6-6 or 7-5. Their schedule is not horrible, but if they lose to Syracuse, that probably will cost them a bowl game this year. It really did kind of came down here between these two teams in order to make it to a bowl game. But for Syracuse, though, Syracuse has a pretty tough schedule. Last year's schedule was so easy for them that they won 10 games. But this year, I feel like it's going to be a tremendous step back year for Syracuse. They lost a lot from last season, so yeah, the Orange I feel like are going to be definitely taking a step back. So yeah, one of these three teams probably could make it to a bowl game. Again, Virginia has a pretty easy schedule, but the talent is not there for them just yet. Syracuse I feel like is going to take a step back, and then you look at Pittsburgh. If they win against Syracuse, they will probably make it to 6-6. So yeah, the Panthers probably have the best shot out of these 5-7 teams in order to make it to a bowl game this year. So again, I got these teams going 5-7, but Virginia 2-6 in conference, and then 3-5 for both the Panthers and the Orange of Syracuse and Pittsburgh at 5-7 as well. And then you got California here at 7-5, 3-5 in conference play. Boy, so many teams have, pretty easy schedules in the ACC, and Cal is another team of those teams that have pretty easy schedules, and that's why I got them going 7-5, and then 3-5 in conference play. And because of their schedule, they could probably go 8-4, or maybe even possibly 9-3. I don't want to go too far there with Cal, but still, this team I think they go 7-5. I know people are saying that this is going to be a really bad California team because they do lose their starting quarterback in Mendoza. But still, I think Cal is going to be a pretty solid team, and I got this team going 7-5 because of their schedule. Let's now go to the next set of teams here in these standings. So next up, we got Virginia Tech and Florida State. They're also both predicted to go 3-5 in the conference, but Virginia Tech 6-6, and then Florida State at 7-5 as well. So yeah, Virginia Tech is the only 6-6 team I have in these standings. Virginia Tech, I'm not quite high on this team compared to last year in 2024. This year could be a pretty big step back for them. Well, last year they were kind of a disappointment, but this year it's definitely going to be a team that, is definitely not going to be the best team in the ACC in my opinion. And they got a pretty tough non-conference schedule. Same thing with Florida State. Virginia Tech and Florida State actually have pretty similar schedules. And before we get to that, Virginia Tech, I do have them beating Cal in the head-to-head. So that's how a 6-6 Virginia Tech team ended up being ahead of a 7-5 California team. So I just wanted to clear that up there. Virginia Tech, though, they have a tough non-conference schedule. They have Vanderbilt, and they also got South Carolina, so a couple of SEC teams in the non-conference. And they actually lost to Vanderbilt last year. So if Virginia Tech wins at least one of those two games, I think they definitely will make it to a bowl game. And then you look at Florida State. They have to play Alabama in week 1, and then they got, of course, Florida at the end of the year. So again, Florida State and Virginia Tech, they both have pretty similar schedules with two SEC teams on the non-conference schedule. For Florida State, I have them losing both of their non-conference games because Alabama is definitely going to be a tough one, and they have to play Florida, of course, on the road. Virginia Tech, I have them beating Vanderbilt, but I also have them losing to South Carolina, so that's the difference here between these two teams and record-wise, but still, pretty similar schedules here for Florida State and Virginia Tech. I do expect the Seminoles to definitely turn things around this year. Obviously, just talked about it earlier. They were the worst team in the ACC last year in 2025. Yeah, that was definitely a big surprise here for what Florida State did last season. They were able to not go winless in the conference, but still, going 2-10 after an undefeated season a couple of years ago, yeah, that's just not going to get it done if you're Florida State. But still, I got this team going 7-5 this year, turning things around after a pretty embarrassing season last year in 2024. And then you got three teams here, North Carolina, NC State, and Georgia Tech. These three teams are all predicted to go 8-4 and then 5-3 in conference play. We actually have one more team coming up in just a moment, also at 8-4 and then 5-3 in conference play. I know there's a lot of hype around North Carolina this year with Bill Belichick coming in. I don't want to go too far with this team to be a playoff team or anything like that. They definitely have some concerns with the roster last year. You got some depth concerns, and if they have injuries on the way, this could be a pretty disappointing start to the Bill Belichick era. But they got, a pretty easy schedule. Again, a lot of these ACC teams on this list, some of them have pretty easy schedules, some of them have tougher schedules, but still, you look at some of these teams, they got pretty easy schedules. NC State, the same thing, they have a pretty easy schedule. That's the reason why I think the Wolfpack can definitely have a better season compared to last year, and they're going to be solid on both sides of the football especially. But again, North Carolina also has a pretty easy schedule. I do got the Wolfpack beating North Carolina in that head-to-head, so that's why the Wolfpack here ended up being ahead of the Tar Heels. But really, head-to-head doesn't really matter in this scenario when you got like 4 possible 8-4 teams all battling for probably that 5th place spot in the ACC conference. Again, you got one more team coming up as well with the same record and the same conference record. And then you look at Georgia Tech. I feel like Georgia Tech is a team that's a sleeper team in the ACC. I feel like this team can definitely probably get to 10 wins. They do have a tough schedule because they have to play Georgia in the non-conference, but still, this is a Georgia Tech team that has a lot coming back. You got Haynes King coming back at quarterback, and yeah, this Georgia Tech team could definitely be a sleeper team in the ACC and potentially a top 25 team. So like I said, these 3 teams all predicted to go 8-4, but like I said, we have another 8-4 team as we go to the final set of teams here. We got Duke here at 8-4, also at 5-3 in conference play, but we got Louisville also at 5-3, but a different record at 9-3. I just talked about it. These 4 teams, Duke, North Carolina, NC State, and then also Georgia Tech. One of these 4 teams probably could emerge to be a dark horse team in the ACC. I feel like people are sleeping on this Duke team, though. I feel like this is going to be a top 25 team this year, and I know they have some, question marks, especially on the offense, but they were actually a big surprise last year, and I think this defense will be pretty good because Manny Diaz is a defensive background head coach and everything. And you look at the offense, I feel like with the transfer quarterback coming in from Tulane, I think he's going to do pretty well for the Blue Devils. So again, I think Duke will definitely challenge and be like a dark horse team in this conference. And like I said, these 4 teams, Duke, NC State, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina, one of these 4 teams probably could emerge at being a top dark horse team in the ACC. And I think Louisville's probably that top dark horse team, though. They are predicted to go 9-3, but 5-3 in conference play. So we basically could have like a 5-way tie here for this like 4th place spot in the conference. And one of these like 5 teams definitely could probably, challenge these top teams in the ACC. So yeah, these 5 teams, definitely keep an eye on them. They can definitely be like teams that could definitely challenge for a spot in the ACC championship this year. So yeah, Louisville 9-3, 5-3 in conference play. And then the rest of those 4 teams, Duke, NC State, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina, they're all predicted to go 8-4 and 5-3 in conference play. Next we got Miami at 11-1 and then 7-1 in conference play. I could definitely see Miami doing a little bit, maybe not better than 11-1 to be honest, because this team probably can go 10-2 or 9-3 as well, and they could probably go 6-2 in conference play. But you look at their schedule, they got a couple of tough non-conference games against Notre Dame, and they also got Florida out of the SEC. Maybe they lose one of those 2 games. Maybe they go 10-2 or possibly go 9-3 if they were to lose both of them. So that probably could be the worst case scenario for Miami is go 9-3. Probably the best case would be 10-2. But either way, I got this team going 11-1, and you also got SMU at 7-1 in the conference, but 10-2 overall. So you're probably wondering, how does SMU being ahead of Miami make sense? Well, you look at this. You look at the schedule. Both of these teams do play each other in the regular season. I do got SMU winning that conference matchup. So that's the reason why I got the Mustangs here ahead of Miami because of that head-to-head. I do have SMU losing an extra game, but that does come in the non-conference, I believe, against TCU on the road. So, yeah, that's the reason why SMU does end up being ahead of Miami. Again, it's not really about the overall records. It's about the conference records, and it's also about the head-to-head at the end of the day. But I got SMU beating Miami in that head-to-head matchup. The one loss for SMU, though, in the conference comes against Clemson on the road, and that, of course, is in Death Valley. And I got Clemson at the top here, as my top ACC, pretty much team here in these standings. I got Clemson going 11-1 and then 8-0 in conference play. So I do got Clemson losing one game, and that does come in the non-conference as well. They lose to South Carolina, in my opinion, at the end of the year, but they still go undefeated in conference play and still make it to the ACC championship. And like I said, I've been kind of favoring Clemson ever since the beginning of the offseason. You know, this team does have a bunch of experience coming back, and they have a very talented roster. And again, they won the ACC last year, and it could be the second time this year that they win it as well. So yeah, Clemson, I got this team going 11-1. They have a tough non-conference schedule with LSU and South Carolina both. Yeah, Clemson, they could probably lose to LSU as well and go 10-2, but still undefeated in conference play. But they probably could lose one game in the conference because there are some games maybe they could potentially lose and go 7-1. But I think Clemson, with the experience, I think this is going to be a pretty dangerous team this year in 2025. Again, Cade Klubnik has really proven to us that he can be a good quarterback. So yeah, this Clemson team, I got them going 11-1, but undefeated in conference play. Again, the one loss coming to South Carolina at the end of the year. So let's now get to my ACC championship matchup prediction, and that of course will be a rematch from last year's conference championship game, SMU versus Clemson. This is not what I predicted last year, but still I'm going to go with it this year. I really think I can see a possible another team probably, you know, could emerge from that, you know, five-way tie like I mentioned from earlier. Maybe one of those five teams can challenge Clemson here and make it to the ACC championship. But you know, this is a possible rematch from last year's conference championship, and then also a possible rematch here from the regular season game. I do have Clemson winning that first game against SMU. I think I did say they will win it by at least a couple of touchdowns. This one will be on a neutral field this time, so I think it will be a closer game. But it's kind of hard to go against Clemson here in this, you know, prediction here, because again, I've been favoring this Clemson team to win this conference ever since the beginning of the year, and I think this Clemson team with a lot of experience are just going to be really good. And also, it's hard to beat a team twice. We know how that works, but still, I think Clemson, the second time, you know, I think this is a closer game, like I said, compared to the first game. Clemson probably wins by a couple of touchdowns, but the second game will be a lot closer, and I think Clemson definitely will win this one at the end of the day. I'm going to say by 4 points. So I got Clemson winning the ACC championship this year in 2025, and that also will probably put them in a spot in the college football playoff, and then also I got them winning for the second year in a row. So I got Clemson winning it all in the ACC, so that's my predictions for this conference in 2025. Do you guys agree or disagree with these predictions? And give me your predictions for the ACC, and give me your conference champion for this conference as well. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.